Whether you like it or not, teams are about to implement trench warfare on the Jaguars' defensive line. I'll tell you about whether I think it'll work or not in this edition of Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, I'm your host, Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jaguars. Thank you for joining us and making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. And we're very, very proud to now say that we have over 3,000 subscribers on our YouTube page. So I appreciate that. You all did that, and I appreciate that very, very much. We are free on all platforms, not just on YouTube, but everywhere you get your podcast. And we thank you for making us your first listen. We're going to talk about the trenches today. A lot of discussions have gone on in the past couple of days since the Jaguars lost 29-21. And I have to remind people, the score was 29-21. It wasn't 45-3. All right. But it just feels like when a team gets run on, that the game and the score is much worse because it's like you couldn't do anything. You saw guys hanging on people, just getting bullied and pushed around when they needed to stop. Of course, they ended up getting one at the end of the quarter once Philly had milked off what felt like 47 minutes off the clock and drove all the way down to the other end of the field. They just decided not to go for a field goal and decided to go for a fourth down, and the Jaguars stopped them. But whenever you get pushed around and bullied like that, it feels like the score is worse than it really is. A week prior, the score really was bad when the Jaguars actually beat the Chargers 38-10. And it seemed like a worse whooping than that because the Jaguars were running the ball late whenever they wanted to. They ran it more than they threw it. And a lot of discussions have gone on as to why the Jaguars didn't run the ball more. Situational football might not dictate you being able to do that all the time. So I'll be careful when I talk about this way. But I heard this from two NFL players. One who used to play for the Jags and another who did not play with the Jags, but he follows it pretty closely. They said whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, or whether it's true or not, teams are now going to test the trenches of Jacksonville based on what Philly was able to do this past Sunday. And I totally agree with him. I have a couple of terms I like to use. I usually use them about teams like Green Bay because for years, people did it to the Packers, like in the playoffs. When it became time to play in the playoffs, they kind of did it to the Packers. They wanted to see if they had any hind parts. That's one thing that one way of looking at it is a little good old Southern term. And then the other one was they wanted to see if they had any sand in their pocket, like if they have any weight on them. So it leaves the question, like, will that be a successful strategy? This is one of the things that we thought would happen anyway with Indy having Jonathan Taylor and, of course, Tennessee just having that mindset anyway, and plus having Derrick Henry. Could the Jaguars stop the run? In 2 games this year, it appeared that question was answered because they actually stopped Jonathan Taylor in the second week, and then they had a lot of success against Austin Eckler the week after that. And those 2 offensive lines for those respective teams, Indy and the Chargers, were supposed to be pretty good offensive lines. There was actually questions about Washington's offensive line, and the Eagles obviously have a very good offensive line, but the Eagles were missing 2 people. And trust me, I got a phone call from somebody who is close to Philly, and they told me that. Just remember that butt whooping that you got the other day. It happened because we had 2 people missing on our offensive front. So that means that 4 weeks into the season, teams are going to use that tape because it's the latest tape. And now teams have sort of a read on you and a beat on you and what you want to do. So they get better and more prepared because now they have a number of references that they can go back to when they're checking what you do well and what you don't do well. A source just told me now what everyone's going to do from this point forward is they're going to think that the blueprint to beating the Jacksonville is to be patient, to force the quarterback into making mistakes, and to run the football and then hit big plays. The Jaguars have also given up a lot of big plays over the top. And it seems like it always happens when they are really focused and selling out on trying to stop the run, and they miss tackles on the back end. So is it a cause for concern? A little bit. I'll talk to you about some more in this segment about how it's structured, what they can do about it. And then I'll talk about how they can improve and what can they improve to mask what now may appear to be a deficiency with the way they're constructed and the deficiency within their identity. You got good DNA, like when you get your identity, but the bad part is you have some bad characteristics as well. And we want to see if this is an examine this to see if it's one of them. I'll do more of that in segment 2. In segment 3, we're going to talk about the silver lining. I'm always going to give you a silver lining because I kind of suck you in a little bit, but then I'll set you free. And I'll tell you why it's not all bad and why even if it sounds negative, it's really not. It's just an honest, transparent view and self-reflection of what you really are. You got to make sure you know that before you go out here and think you can get away with stuff that you can't get away with on the football field. You have to actually know what your limitations are, who you are, and why you are who you are. So we'll discuss that more as we move along. But right now, this is the deal. And we've talked about this, and I'm glad, something told me to hit on these topics so that we can always sort of use them as a reference or go back to them. Because before the season started, when they were in the last week of cuts, I kept giving you predictions of who I thought was going to make the team. So when the actual predictions came out, I was pretty close, but there was something that rang my bell and was very, very alarming. And that was that in their base, and we discussed this yesterday, so I'll repeat it. In their base, they have their 2 biggest defensive linemen on the field at the same time. They use Devon Hamilton at nose and at defensive end, which is right next to him in this defense, in a 3-man front with 2 outside linebackers standing up. They use Folo Fadukazi. So the backup, the other guy's more like a 3 technique, and that's Roy Robinson Harris. When they go to the sub package, one of those guys may stay in, or both of them might go out, and they'll line up with a bunch of guys who line up as defensive ends, 3 techniques, and outside linebackers in a 4-man front. That's the sub package, and they'll have an extra DB. So in order to get to that and be successful at it, you have to win early and force a long down and distance. And that's where you're going to rush the passer and chase the quarterback, right? So those guys they're not really going to be in the game. And even if you run or draw, the other team comes out with something like that, they're quick enough to react and adjust and either get off the field on 3rd down or force another 3rd down play if it was 2nd and long. So the base defense wasn't really going to be out there that much. And I recall when Malcolm Brown was released, Doug Peterson said there's just not a lot of snaps in today's game for guys like that if you can get out of your base. That's one way. The other way is if one of the guys you have that you play side by side does not get hurt. Because Devon Hamilton could easily slide over and play the defensive end position, and you can come in with your 3rd interior player and put him at nose now that Folo Fadukazi has a bit of a quad injury. And I don't know if he's going to come back this week or not, and I'm not trying to panic about the roster, but what I'm saying is any scenario that doesn't allow you to have that double beef in your base, injury or fatigue, puts you at a disadvantage because you don't have another player, you don't have anyone else that you could rest a guy, or if a guy has to miss a small amount of time, you don't really have anyone else proven that could give you some hope in that situation. And it affects you somewhere else too. If one of those guys isn't there, it affects you in goal line, and it also affects you in short yardage. Quarterback sneaks, 4th and 1, hand it to the running back. Goal line situations, like I said, you don't move the guys out of the way so that your linebackers can flow to the ball if you have these smaller players in there getting blown off the ball. How do you improve it? Player acquisitions? Maybe. Lifting guys up from the practice squad? Maybe. Or find a way to play better offensively so you don't have to depend on being in base longer than you're comfortable with. Now, I always not on the microphone. Old military instructors told me that when they were in class and they said something that was really, really important, to knock on the desk or the podium because you need to pay attention because that was a testable item. For me, what it represents is that's the answer. That's going to have to be the answer. Because 320-pound guys that can really play football aren't just walking around on the street without a job right now. I'll talk about more of that in Segment 2 here on Locked On Jaguars. Listen, man, I have been very transparent about some gut issues that I've had with my battle with diverticulitis. I missed some time on the podcast twice this year because of inflammation. I still go through that now, and it's something that I deal with every single day. So, what I really, really need is something that I can take that does not bother me. Now, our next partner has a product I literally use every day, and I started taking AG1 because I needed to take those vitamins. I wanted something to give me better gut health, more energy, optimized immune system. And I hated taking a whole bunch of pills and vitamins because that stuff actually upsets my stomach. And I wanted a supplement that actually tastes great, and I wanted to see what the hype was all about. So, what is the stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole foods, sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All of those things. Now, it costs less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. It's cheaper than getting all the different supplements yourself. You're investing in an all in one nutritional insurance. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1 year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com /NFL network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com /NFL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. We thank you for joining us here once again on Locked On Jaguars. Breaking the defensive line down and trying to figure out, do they have enough beef? And if they don't have enough beef, where can they get enough beef from? So I broke down the construct of the roster and why I think it's important and concerning that they don't have the beef. Now, mind you, in 2 games this year, they stopped the run. In 2 games, they really didn't do very well at stopping the run when they had to anyway. So is this a panic? No. But what it is I had more than, like I said, I had 2 people tell me, whether you like it or not, and whether it's true or not, teams are going to come out here and punch Jaguars in the stomach and try to use the game in Philly as a blueprint to winning football late. Doug Peterson as much said when he was talking about his own offense, he said you throw the ball to score, but you run the ball to win. So teams that are going to be concentrating on trying to win the game may look at the film and tape and say, you know what, this is what we're going to focus on. This is the area where we're going to focus. And this was what we believe will help us because they lack depth and they lack enough people and enough bodies in their trenches to stop the run consistently. All right. So we asked, what do? Do you go out here and sign Ndamukong Suh or find a 300-pound defensive lineman? Do you make a trade? Teams aren't just giving up guys like that, right? And then, you don't want to overcommit financially because you're paying Fadokazi all of that money. And the other thing is you have plans. I believe the team should have plans to eventually pay Devon Hamilton a lot of money. So you don't want too much money tied up in one position. So now you have to do well at player development. You have to do well at research. Your pro personnel department has to find a gem or a diamond in the rough to be your third DB. I heard somebody say the other day they need to go find a Marcel Darius type player. Not making that kind of money, you can't. You just can't use that many resources. Somebody making that kind of money is going to be a starter. You can't bench one of the 2 guys you already have now. All right. So the goal of other teams is going to be to try to keep Jaguars in base, to try to punish them when they get out of base, to try to punish them with the running game to make them go back to base so that they can play a game of let's wear them down. They're going to test and see if your hind parts work or see if you got any sand in your pocket. That's what, the theme here is today, those 2 things. And whether you like it or not, or whether it's true or not, that is what's coming. So I think you guys need to mentally prepare to get ready for teams to just try to take the Jaguars out. They're trying to eliminate those pass rushers. Josh Allen is a guy who's second in the league in pressures, and Trayvon is always lurking somewhere. They're going to get rid of all of that. They're going to get rid of your little twists and all of your little blitzes. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to punch you in your face. You put all of those little dudes on that defensive line, and we're just going to hit you in your stomach every single time. hit you in your stomach. And as soon as you put your arms down, pop, we're going to pop you in your mouth. And we're going to tell you, get those arms back up. They are going to test your mettle from this point forward. This is the danger in having a game like they had the other day, where in broad daylight, teams saw what the Eagles were able to do. Now, I do got a silver lining for you, so I don't want y'all to panic and think that, oh, my God, we're just that bad off. No, we're just trying to figure out what the plan is going to be when these teams try to do that, because they're going to try to do it. It's a copycat league. Teams are going to try to do this until you prove that you are not who they think you are. If there's going to be a perception of the Jacksonville Jaguars right now, based on when teams, they started winning some games, so everybody said, let me tune in. And when you tuned in, you saw a team go for over 200 yards, teams are going to say, that's the key. And you better get used to it. And those guys got to get ready. And the personnel department has to get ready. And the offense has to get ready and score some points and not put them in this position. All of these things work together. So the answer might not be going out and signing someone, because it might not be feasible financially. The answer might not be trading for someone. If you don't already have him on the practice squad, or you can't claim a guy off a practice squad from another team, and you don't think he's one of your 53 best players, that might not be the answer to go out and get him either. You can't change your game plan up. You can't change how you taught guys to play. You can make a little minor adjustments. You're not going to change your entire way of playing defense right in the middle of a season. You can't do that, because one of the things you preach is you got to be who you are, and this is who we are. You just got to play better, right? So what do? The answer might not have anything to do with the defensive line. It might be, the biggest answer is you got to play the way you played against Indy and the way you played against the Chargers. So now it comes down to this. You almost have to be flawless, and we remember this in 2017. You almost have to be flawless in your approach. You have to be very judicious with penalties on offense and defense. A holding call gets you in 1st and 20. Long down and distance, drop passes. All of these things are heightened now, because now one of the most important things you're going to deal with is time of possession. And why is time of possession so important? Because as long as that defense is out there, your lack of depth in the middle keeps getting questioned more and more and becomes more and more vulnerable. And that's when teams will decide to punch you in the stomach. So, is there a silver lining? Is there something to be happy about? Or is it all gloom and doom for the Jacksonville Jaguars just because they've had one game where things didn't quite go their way? I don't think so. I do not believe that is the case. And I'll tell you why in segment 3, tell you what the silver lining is. After I let you guys know about NFL key predictions. Thanks again for making Locked On Jaguars your first listen every day. Make sure you check out NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL. Locked On NFL's local experts give you the inside scoop on the 5 biggest games of the NFL weekend, including Sunday and Monday Night Football, plus betting advice from the field's leading experts, BetOnline. Follow NFL Key Predictions for every Friday on Locked On NFL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. And I want to tell you about BetOnline. That's right. BetOnline, man, is the number one source for all of your football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. Could have done a little bit better this weekend had I paid more attention to the info at BetOnline when I made my parlay. As always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information, with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. Golf is wild right now. They got all kinds of stuff going on. But head to betonline.net to use your mobile device to learn more, because BetOnline is where the game starts. You start here with me, right here on Locked On Jaguars every single day, because it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. I am Tony Wiggins, reminding you we are free on all platforms, wherever you get your podcast. So we've talked about what the issues are with the defensive line, or what the potential issues and vulnerabilities are, how they got this way, why it's important to pay attention to how they're constructed, what teams are going to do. They're going to find if you got any dirt in your pocket, some sand. They're going to see if you got any hind parts, right? See how your legs feel in the fourth quarter when they're leaning on you and beating on you. This is what folks are going to do, man. And we got to get used to it, and the guys have to respond. Not only do the defenders have to respond, the game plan and the offense now has to respond. It's not at the level of 2017 where there was just a small margin for error. It's not that, because Trevor Lawrence can bring you back. The offense is more explosive. They have playmakers on both sides of the ball. They got a real good punter who can change field position. So it's not that dire or that drastic. But if we're talking about reducing the stress level on Trevor and running the ball more and not placing so much on him to allow him to be, harassed a little bit the way he was in Philly Sunday, reducing that a little bit. So that means you are sort of reducing some of that firepower, some of that explosiveness, some of that, let's throw it all against the wall and let's see what we got and give it to our quarterback and let him chunk the ball down the field. All of that stuff that we talk about. If we're playing more ball control, if we're playing more time of possession, you're going to get into that kind of matchup with these teams I'm talking about, and you got to be able to sustain it without a lot of mistakes and penalties. And you saw in the two games where they made mistakes and penalties and drop balls and all of those things, even the game that had a 14-0 lead against Philly, they lost when someone got to the point where they could test their mettle and test the strength of their defensive line when they needed to at the end of the game running the football. Silver lining. In those two games, they only lost by a combined 14 points. In both of those games, they had the ball. Against Washington, if they score a touchdown, they win. Against the Eagles, if they score a touchdown and convert to 2, they tie. So as bad as it might seem, and as hard of a luck it might feel that there's now this thing that has been identified as a little bit of a weakness and an Achilles heel and a point of attack from the enemy, they could have won both of those damn games if they didn't make those mistakes that they made. So why is it discussion? They're 2-2, man. What's going on? They're probably still going to win the division, right? Yeah. But in our own football self-esteem, we're no longer comparing this year to those years where they weren't good and all we wanted to see them do was just be competent. No. We're upset that they're 14th or 16th in the power rankings. We should be higher. The Chargers are 7th. We beat them. We blew them out in their own stadium. We're a top 10. So when you're a top 10 team, you know what you start doing? You start thinking and acting and expecting certain things. And you don't want any weaknesses. You don't want anywhere where somewhere you're vulnerable for attack. And if you are, you want to know that there's things you can do to overcome it. So that's why we're having these conversations. We can't revert back to, well, at least we're playing better. At least we got a real coach and our future's bright. Man, I ain't talking about no future. I'm talking about today. How we going to claim to be a top 10 team and a team that can win the division and make some noise if we're still having a mentality and the acceptance of someone who's losing all the time? Doesn't work like that. Doesn't work like that. Once you get in the deep end of the pool, you down there. You can't go back down here and act like you're in the kiddie pool no more. You better know how to swim when you go down here to 8 to 10 feet. The rules are different when you can put your foot on the surface of the pool than they are when you can't touch the bottom with your feet. You got to act differently. You got to move differently. Can't do the same things you could do down there. And that's what we're in deep water now, folks. And that's why we're pointing all of these little things. Every little thing matters. Every little thing matters to people that are used to winning. Nick Saban loses one game and people want to fire him in Tuscaloosa. There have been people, I put out a poll today from one of the polls that says Mike Thompson, the top 10 guys that coaches that might be in danger of losing their job. The dude's a Hall of Famer, and he was actually on the list. Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. You know why? Because they're used to winning and they don't want to see any flaws. And that's the mentality that I think we can start having here. One thing you need to do is make your second listen the Peacock and Williamson NFL show because it's outstanding. Both of those guys are tremendous. Brian Peacock is one of the best at Locked On, and Matt Williamson is an NFL scout, former NFL scout, that can give you the type of information you can't get anywhere else, right? It's not an armchair. He was actually out there doing it every single day. So make sure you like and subscribe the Peacock and Williamson NFL show wherever you get your podcasts. They are outstanding. They're the total truth. I love when they invite me on that show because we have a good time. And by the way, Matt Williamson is one of the people that were real high on the Jaguars this year. It wasn't just me. So make sure you check that out. You can check me out every single day here on Locked On Jaguars, making me your first listen because it's your team every day. Do what I always say, man. Take care of each other. Got some more content for you coming back tomorrow. Get ready for the crossover. Check me out on Locked On NFL on Wednesday. Until then, take care. This is Tony Wiggins.